Part 36. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, Past and Present. Chapter 351. Chapter 351 Dead Baby. Suwanner thought of Wenyao's belly. Counting it, it seemed to be 7 or 8 months old. If something happens, it will obviously not be a small matter. I gonna go see. Suwanner thought for a while, rather than staying here, it would be better to go and see the situation. If the baby in Wenyao's belly is really in danger, maybe there is something else she can do. Thinking of this, Suwanner walked a little faster. Sun Jiaro put away the letter of peace signed by Suwanner and stood up with Sun Xiao. Since there is still something to do in the Su family, my father and I will leave first. She said something to the servant beside her, and the father and daughter left together. At this time, the courtyard where Wenyao lived was busy with people coming and going. One basin after another of blood and water was brought out, and Wenyao's hoarse wails came from inside the house, which was heartbreaking. She was lying on the bed with her legs bent so that Wenpo could see the situation clearly. Rong Wenpo raised her head and said, "Madam, take a deep breath, now is not the time for you to exert force." Then he said to the maid next to him, "Bring your wife a clean towel and let her bite it." The maid did not dare to delay and put the prepared towel to Wenyao's mouth. Wenyao bit the towel tightly, and her cry of pain was muffled under the towel. Because of that fall, the child in her belly was going to be born prematurely. Pain came, Wenyao couldn't help but bite the towel tightly, and grabbed the quilt with both hands, so hard that you could see the bulging veins, and the joints were completely yellow-white. Sweat flowed down from his forehead, rolled over his cheeks, slid down his neck, and disappeared into his collar. It hurts. This is Wenyao's only feeling. In fact, even she herself did not expect such a thing to happen. This child is the only way she can stay in the Su family. She has always taken good care of this child, so naturally she will not intentionally fall and harm the child. That fall was really unexpected by her. "Madam." Rong Wenpo's voice rang in his ears, but Wenyao felt as if it was coming from afar. Looking at Wenyao's blurred and misty eyes, Rong Wenpo knew that the situation was not good. "Take off the towel quickly, put the ginseng piece under her mouth, and hold it in her mouth." Even after taking off the towel, Wenyao couldn't make any sound. Only when she got closer could she hear the faint sound. The maid opened Wenyao's mouth and put the ginseng piece in, but before she could take her hand out, Wenyao bit it down fiercely. It turned out to be another wave of severe pain. Wenyao was confused and didn't know that the towel had been taken away, so she bit it down hard. "Madam, please open your mouth quickly." The maid screamed in pain, tears welling up in her eyes. When she took her hand out, there were deep teeth marks on the back of her hand. There was blood coming out of the wound. Wenyao's situation is even more urgent, and no one can take care of this maid. "Is the doctor here?" Rong Wenpo still moved in an orderly manner, relaxing Wenyao's body. It's coming, give way." The housekeeper came in with someone, and Lu Changping was carrying the medicine box. When he saw Rong Wenpo, he stopped in his tracks. But Rong Wenpo didn't pay attention to who he was at all, and just said, "Doctor, please show this lady quickly." Lu Changping frowned, but the housekeeper urged him again. He didn't think much about it, so he could only put down the medicine box and give Wenyao a diagnosis. After confirming Wenyao's condition, Lu Changping called his apprentice Chun Sheng, "Fetch the medicine according to this recipe, cook it and deliver it as soon as possible." "Yes, master." Chun Sheng took the prescription and left quickly. Lu Changping took out the silver needle again and wanted to acupuncture Wenyao. "Madam seems to have fainted." Suddenly a maid shouted. Lu Changping raised his eyes and saw that Wenyao had her eyes closed and seemed to be unconscious from pain. "Wake her up quickly." Rong Wenpo noticed it almost as soon as Wenyao fainted. She could observe that Wen Yao, who was still exerting her strength before, suddenly lost her strength. Lu Changping took off the silver needle, stepped forward and pierced it into Wen Yao's pupil. After a moment, Wen Yao opened her eyes. "Madam, you can use your strength now." Rong Wenpo shouted. Wen Yao vaguely heard the word strength and began to exert strength. She also knows her current situation. Only after giving birth to a child will she have a chance to turn around. Lu Changping glanced at Rong Wenpo, who had lowered her head, and began to apply acupuncture. Gradually, Wen Yao lost her strength again. Chun Sheng came in with the prepared medicine. "Master, the medicine is ready. Feed her." After taking a bowl of medicine, Wen Yao seemed to have strength again. See the end. Hearing this, Wen Yao became even more energetic. Rong Wenpo continued, "The neck is out, madam, try harder." I don't know how long it took, but at the moment when Wen Yao's strength was about to be completely exhausted, Rong Wenpo shouted, "The baby is out." Wen Yao's whole body was relaxed. Before she could be thankful, she heard Rong Wenpo's panicked voice, "Why isn't this child breathing?" Wen Yao's eyes widened immediately. Her breathing began to become rapid. "Ma'am, she's bleeding." Rong Wenpo held the child in her arms and hurried to see Wen Yao's condition. "It's a massive hemorrhage. But this shouldn't be the case." Rong Wenpo couldn't understand and had no time to think about it. "Doctor, take a look." Lu Changping stepped forward and saw that he was bleeding profusely. He was also panicked. "How so?" The news that Wen Yao had given birth to a dead baby had reached the ears of Mrsu and Su Changqing. As soon as Mrsu heard this, she took a few quick breaths and fainted as she thought of something. Su Changqing was startled by Mrsu before she had time to react to the dead baby. Su Chongzhong and Su Yuqing beside them were even more at a loss. Only Su Weiner arranged things in an orderly manner. In the room, Lu Chang's face was as white as snow, his fingers were trembling slightly, and he was trying to save Wen Yao. But the death of the baby irritated Wen Yao, and coupled with the heavy bleeding, Wen Yao's complexion became increasingly pale. Rong Wenpo originally kept a close eye on Wen Yao, but the next moment she recognized Lu Changping. She thought about what happened the last time she was at the Wen family. How could the child be dead? Wen Yao stared in one direction and stopped breathing. She thought that a mother was more valuable than her son, but she didn't expect that her child would be gone, and she would also lose her life. How ironic. Lu Changping packed his things timidly, shook his head and said, "It can't be saved, it can't be saved." "Dr. Lu, please stay." Rong Wenpo said coldly and stopped Lu Changping. She had confirmed before delivering the baby that the child in Wen Yao's belly was fine. The reason why there was so much blood from the fall was because the belly was bruised, but the child was not hurt. Just before Lu Changping came, she was absolutely sure that there would be no accidents during the delivery this time. Only the mother was too panicked and might be weak for a few days after the birth, but it would definitely not be like this. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 352. Chapter 352. Not afraid of hardship. Rong Wenpo's eyes were like 1,000 pounds weighing on Lu Changping. Lu Changping's legs were trembling a little under his clothes. But he still looked serious on the surface. "Rong Wenpo, what else do you have to do?" "Dr. Lu, we are all aware of Mrs. Wen's situation. I want to know why such a thing happened." As soon as he heard what Rong Wenpo said, Lu Changping knew that the other party doubted him. He pretended to be calm, and out of the corner of his eye he saw that Mrsu and Su Changqing were no longer in the yard, and he said loudly, "Of course I know Mrs. Wen's situation. She was frightened and gave birth prematurely, which is extremely dangerous. What happened like this is not I wish, but there is nothing I can do." Lu Changping dared to speak so bluntly because there were few people in the Su family who could make the decision now that Su Changqing and Mrs. Su were gone. Su Wanner's eyes flashed. It was a good thing for her that Wen Yao and the child were dead. She stepped forward and said, "Po Rong Wen, my grandmother is already in a coma because of this incident. No matter how much you ask, you can't change the situation, so don't say anything more." Rong Wenpo didn't expect Su Weiner to say this, but she knew in her heart that she couldn't control this matter. Since the Su family didn't care about it, why should she be the one who stood out? She lowered her face and said, "I've tried my best, so I'll take my leave." Rong Wenpo finished speaking and walked away. Seeing her figure walking away, Lu Changping breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Su Weiner with some suspicion in his eyes. He didn't know why Su Weiner wanted to speak for him. "Dr. Lu, this matter is not your fault, you don't need to take it to heart." "Su Weiner, what are you talking about?" Su Yuking was still in the shock of her mother's death. Seeing Rong Wenpo leaving and hearing what Su Weiner said, she couldn't help but speak. "My mother was killed by them. She and Su Changzhong had the opportunity to stay in the Su mansion because of their mother. Now that their mother has passed away, where should the two brothers and sisters go? That old woman wishes that all three of her family were not at Su's house. When she calms down, she will definitely kick them out. As for her father Su Changqing, Su Yuking has no expectations at all. If he was really responsible, he would not have allowed them to return to the Su family after so many years. Even, they have not yet been included in the genealogy, and their identities have not been announced to the public. If they don't make a fuss over this matter, they may not have the slightest chance." If Su Yuking hadn't spoken, Su Weiner wouldn't have even laid eyes on her until she entered the yard. Su Weiner even frowned, as if wondering who the other party was. "Sister Yuking, you might as well go to your grandmother and say this. Su Weiner is very confident that Mrs. Su will definitely be on her side." Su Yuking paused as she said these words. "Go and talk to Mrs. Su? How dare she? But if I didn't say anything, this matter would have been brushed aside like this." Su Yuking was so angry that her mouth went dry. From the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of Su Changzhong, who was still dazed beside her. She reached out and pinched him in anger. "It hurts, what are you doing?" Su Changzhong was stimulated by the pain and came back to his senses. He looked at Su Yuking, his face full of dissatisfaction. "My mother is in trouble, why are you still asking me? Su Changzhong, do you still want to stay in the Su family?" Su Yuking said this in Su Changzhong's ear. Of course Su Changzhong also wants to stay in the Su family. Although it is not as good as what he thought before, it is not bad. At least he is a young master in the Su family. "Of course I do. Then why don't you help me quickly? What can I do to help you?" Su Changzhong was upset. Su Yuking suppressed her anger and said, "Su Weiner, we will talk to grandma about this. Now, we must detain the person first." "Miss Su." Lu Changping could vaguely see that Su Weiner and Su Yuking were not getting along, so he hurriedly arrived. Su Weiner didn't know what she was thinking of. She looked at Lu Changping and said, "Dr. Lu, it seems that I have to trouble you to stay for the time being. In addition, my grandmother also needs you to visit." She winked at the boy beside her, who immediately stepped forward and held Chun Sheng down. Chun Sheng was taken away by the servants, still shouting, "Master, you have to save me." Lu Changping curled his lips without leaving any trace. "Miss Su, what do you mean?" "Dr. Lu, don't worry, as long as grandma doesn't pursue this matter, we will let you go." Meeting Su Wanner's eyes, Lu Changping frowned and thought for a moment, then added, "Then Rong Wenpo should also stay, right?" "That's natural, I'll ask someone to invite you later. If Mrs. Su really wants to pursue this matter, there is a scapegoat." This is Lu Changping's idea. As for what Su Wanner thought, he didn't know. There was a death in the Su family. This matter did not spread, but everyone in the Sun family knew about it. Sulayun learned that the Su family invited Lu Changping, and he roughly guessed how Wen Yiu died. Sulayun also received the news that Rong Wenpo had just taken a few steps out of Su's house and was invited back. I didn't expect that so many things would happen in just one day. Even Sulayun thought it was a coincidence. Mom, what about the reconciliation? Sulayun asked. Sun Gro took the medicinal soup handed over by Grandma Li, blew a few sips, and replied, your grandfather and I will go there again tomorrow. It's not that they are anxious about reconciliation, but they are worried that if Suwaner feels that they are delaying and activates the goo insect in anger, what will Yuner do? After the medicinal soup cooled down a little, Sun Gro handed it to Sulayun and said, Yuner, drink this medicine while it's hot. This is a folk remedy that Sun Gro asked people to find. Sulayun handed over the bowl. Although it was a folk remedy, he had found someone to take a look at it. Drinking it would not do any harm to the body. She will naturally not reject her mother. After finishing a bowl of medicine in small sips, he popped a candied fruit into his mouth. It was Sun Gro who came here. This medicine is extremely bitter just by smelling it. If it were possible, Sun Gro would wish to suffer this for her daughter. Sulayun was holding candied fruit in her mouth. She had tasted more bitter ones before and was not afraid of the bitterness. But if you can eat sweet food, who would want to taste bitter food? I don't know if there is any news from your brother. Sun Gro sighed helplessly. Early this morning, Suye said that there was a poisonous person somewhere else, so he led his men and ran to look for him. I don't know what the situation is anymore. After eating the candied fruit, the bitterness in your mouth completely dissipates. Sulayun opened his mouth and said, Mom, don't worry, I'll be fine. This is poison. Mom, have you ever said something wrong so many times before? Sun Gro understood what Sulayun meant, but this poison was different from the past. The only thing that made her feel a little more relaxed was that the poison had no way of directly killing the host. At most, the host will be so miserable that he may choose to commit suicide. If it really comes to that point, Sun Gro will not make it easy for Suwaner. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 353. Chapter 353, Calm and Calm. Early the next morning, Mrsu's yard was noisy. Last night, Mrsu woke up from a coma and met Suwaner. I don't know what the grandfather and grandson were talking about. When Suwaner came out, she ordered her servants to start preparing for Wen Yiu's funeral. So when Su Yuqing and Su Changzhong woke up early in the morning, their mother's body was gone. The two of them immediately ran to Mrsu's side, crying and clamoring to see Mrsu. Su Yuqing and Su Changzhong wailed in the yard for a long time and finally saw Mrsu. There is also Suwaner who is waiting for Mrsu to drink medicine in the house. Grandma, you have to make the decision for your mother. Su Yuqing pulled Su Changzhong and knelt down. His knees hit the floor, extremely sincere. Mrsu didn't have a good expression when she saw their actions. You two are here to threaten me. My granddaughter doesn't dare. My grandson wouldn't dare. Su Yuqing and Su Changzhong said in unison. This tacit understanding made Mrsu even more annoyed. She thought of what Suwaner said and snorted coldly. Your mother's own fate is bad, who is to blame? Grandma. Grandma, please calm down, didn't Dr. Lu say that, you are feeling better now, so you can't be angry. Suwaner interrupted Su Yuqing's words, took a mouthful of medicine and handed it to Mrsu's mouth, feeding her to drink it. Mrsu nodded, you are right. After saying this, the two of them seemed to ignore Su Yuking and Su Changzhong, who were still kneeling on the ground. You drank the medicine one spoonful at a time. Su Yuking and Su Changzhong knelt on the ground, only moving their feet from time to time, but did not get up. They understood that Mrs. Su was afraid that she wanted to deter them like this, but they were not completely helpless. After a while, Su Changqing arrived. As soon as he entered the room, he saw Su Yuking and Su Changzhong kneeling on the ground. His eyes were dark, as if he hadn't had a good rest for several nights. Yesterday's events had a big impact on him. But just from the fact that he didn't expect Su Yuking and Su Changzhong, it can be seen that the so-called deep love is just talk on paper. Father. Su Yuking looked at Su Changqing with red eyes. Seeing the flash of distress in Su Changqing's eyes, Su Yuking was glad that she didn't cry in vain last night. She bumped into Su Changzhong beside her and signaled him to behave. Su Changzhong didn't cry, he only showed his face, and his eyes were also green. Dad, Mom is gone, what should we do? Su Changzhong's eyes were somewhat similar to Wen Yao's. When she saw his eyes, Su Changqing couldn't help but think of the past with Wen Yao. Su Changqing stepped forward, stretched out his hand to pull the two of them up, and said, "Why are you kneeling here? Get up quickly." As soon as Su Yuking and Su Changzhong held hands, they heard Su Weiner call out softly, "Grandma, what's wrong with you?" Su Changqing immediately let go of his hand and looked at Mrs. Su. "Mom, are you feeling uncomfortable somewhere else?" Su Yuking and Su Changzhong's hands froze in mid-air. "I don't feel uncomfortable at all. I just feel uncomfortable when I think about what happened yesterday." Mrs. Su sighed softly, "Changqing, I didn't let you marry Yu Yiniang before because she was pregnant with a child. The wedding will not look good. I originally thought that I would hold a wedding for you after she gave birth to the child, but now, I would have held a wedding for you earlier if I had known." Su Changqing will not think about whether Mrs. Su's words are lies. He completely trusts her. "Mom, if there is knowledge under the Yiniang spring, you will understand. I know it too, but I just feel bad about it. Changqing, let Yu Yiniang be buried as soon as possible." Mrs. Su looked at Su Changqing, her eyes were really full of guilt, and Su Changqing completely believed her. Su Yuking trembled heavily. Seeing that Su Changqing was about to agree, she didn't care much and said, "Dad, there is another reason for Mother's death." "What?" Su Changqing was stunned for a moment. He actually didn't know what happened yesterday, and he didn't take the time to ask. Obviously, from the moment Wen Yao died, Su Changqing's feelings for Wen Yao also came to an end. "Dad, my mother was killed by that quack doctor, you must seek justice for your mother." Su Yuking didn't care much and spoke quickly. "I was afraid that if it dragged on any longer, Mrs. Su and Su Weiner would interrupt me again. But the strange thing is that this time, neither Mrs. Su nor Su Weiner interrupted her." After Su Yuking finished speaking, she looked at Su Changqing with expectation. Su Changqing did not disappoint Su Yuking's expectations. "Are you true? Was Yu Yiniang really killed?" "Dad, I heard it with my own ears, that's what Rong Wenpo said." Su Changqing's brows furrowed, as if he was struggling with something. "Evergreen, you should listen more to this matter. Mother is right." Su Changqing suddenly understood and asked his servants to bring Lu Changping. After Lu Changping arrived, he was not as panicked as he was yesterday, but looked calm and relaxed. "I've met Mr. Su Hao." He bowed and saluted with a faint smile on his lips. At first glance, his appearance is easy to convince. Su Changqing raised his hand. "Dr. Lu, I came to you to ask about what happened to Yu Yiniang yesterday. Did you make any mistakes?" "Ashamed." Lu Changping sighed. "If I had asked a few more questions and been more careful, it would not have resulted in such a result." "Why did Dr. Lu say this?" Su Changping's originally angry words became lighter. Lu Changping raised his eyes and glanced at Su Weiner without any trace, and then said, I saw it was wrong Wenpo yesterday, so I didn't ask any more questions. After all, everyone has seen Wrong Wenpo's ability. It's just that I trusted Wrong Wenpo too much and didn't check carefully. 10. I thought that Mrs. Wen's excessive blood loss was due to external injuries, but in fact, there were also internal injuries. But I prescribed the medicine according to the method of external injuries. Normally, drinking this medicine would not cause such a situation. At best it won't work, but my incompetent apprentice actually took the wrong medicine when preparing the medicine and added an extra dose of one ingredient, which resulted in such consequences. Lu Changping spoke sincerely, Master Ho, if you want to punish me, then punish me. I didn't check carefully. Su Changqing narrowed his eyes and stared at Lu Changping for a long time, then suddenly said, go and invite some other doctors to check it out. He did not directly believe what Lu Changping said, but he did not disbelieve it either. Just let people check again. Mrs. Su coughed lightly, I've already asked someone to check this matter. As soon as he finished speaking, Nanny Zhao walked in, followed by two doctors. The words of the two doctors were exactly the same, and they were both consistent with what Lu Changping said. The bleeding mouth of internal injuries was found on Wen Yao's body, and there was indeed an excessive amount of medicine in the leftover medicinal residue after boiling Chun Sheng. If you really want to say that Lu Changping was wrong, it was because he believed in Wrong Wenpo and Chun Sheng too much and was not careful enough. But this is not entirely the fault of Lu Changping. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, Past and Present. Chapter 354. Chapter 354 Li Rui's Request. This is impossible. Finding that things had turned around, Su Yuking was the first to speak out. It was obviously not like this yesterday, so why did everything change overnight? She stood up suddenly and looked at Su Weiner. It was you. It was you who did it? You deliberately helped him fabricate the evidence. Su Yuking said this and pounced directly on Su Weiner. But he was quickly stopped by the boys around him. The boys held her tightly to prevent her from struggling. Su Weiner, you are so cruel. You shut up. A crisp sound of applause sounded. Su Changqing's slap on Su Yuking's face was so hard that when he put it down, his fingertips were still trembling slightly. Su Yuking's cheeks immediately became red and swollen. Her eyes were so painful that tears flowed from her eyes, but she was restrained by the servant and could not do anything. I could only wail like crazy. Dad, Mom was killed by them. Why did you hit me? Su Changzhou was still kneeling on the ground, looking at the scene in front of him, but he didn't know how to react. Because he didn't dare. Hearing Su Yuking's voice, Su Changqing felt upset. He waved his hand and said, shut her mouth. This matter is already in front of you, so why make a fuss? Su Changqing said to Mrs. Su, Mom, since it was an accident, let Dr. Lu go. It's natural. Mrs. Su nodded. She did not lie to Su Changqing. The two doctors had indeed checked and confirmed that what Lu Changping said was true. But before that, she asked Su Weiner to make some preparations. Su Yuking was pushed down by the servant. Su Changqing looked at Su Changzhou and said slowly, there is no need to mention this matter again. You can just stay at home and don't have to worry about it. Yes, Dad. Su Changzhou didn't dare to refute, so he could only agree, and then left the room in embarrassment. After he left, Mrs. Su yawned and said, if these two children stay, what will they say to the outside world in the future? Mom, what else can I say? They are my children. Su Changqing was a little puzzled. Mrs. Su reminded, you and Yu Yiniang are not married yet. Is it possible that you will never marry again? Or do you want to marry Yu Yiniang? Su Changqing rolled his eyes, shook his head and said, since Yu Niang has left, you shouldn't disturb her anymore. Marry a dead man? How could Su Changqing do such a thing? No matter how much he loved Wen Yao, he would not marry a corpse. If he told her about it, wouldn't it just make people laugh? Mrs. knew Su Changqing's temperament very well, so she hid her smile. What the Marquis said is true, but this Wei Yuqing and Chang Zhong will not be included in the family tree. It would not sound good if they were said to be your children, the Marquis. Although people outside know this tacitly, they still do enough to save face. Mrs. can only make a fuss about saving face. In short, since Wen Yao is dead, Su Yuqing and Su Changzhong will never have to think about becoming the real Su family. After all, Wen Yao still carries the label of the daughter of a guilty minister. Su Changqing cupped his hands and said, I understand what mother means, and the two children will also understand. To the outside world, just say that they are adopted and stay in the house. Yuqing and Changzhong are so old, and they are actually at the age of marriage. It is better for the Marquis to choose for them, so that they can make arrangements for them as soon as possible. Mother is right. Su Changqing suddenly realized that he could make some use of the marriage of his two children. But my son doesn't know much about this matter, so it's better to ask my mother to make arrangements. It's okay, I have nothing to do when I'm idle. Mrs. nodded with satisfaction. A big thing has become such a trivial matter. Old madam, General Sun is here again. Mama Zhao said. Hearing this, Mrs.'s face dropped from her gentle smile at Su Wan'er. Su Wan'er was not afraid. Grandma, I know you blame me, but Wan'er and Li Rui really have no relationship anymore. I hope you will make it happen. Mrs. stared at Su Wan'er for a long time. Do you know what will happen after you divorce? In many cases, Mrs. could not refuse Su Wan'er. She watched Su Wan'er grow up, and every bit of it was built by her. It's hard to explain that kind of feeling. Grandma, I know. If Sulayun hadn't interfered with it, I shouldn't have married Li Rui, right? Su Wan'er's words seemed to have a profound meaning. Mrs's eyes flashed. Let's go and have a look. Yes, Grandma. Su Wan'er helped Mrs. go to the main hall. Soon, the two of them arrived. In the main hall, Sun Xiao and Sun Gro were sitting. Seeing Mrs. and Su Wan'er come in, Sun Gro stood up to greet them and behaved like a noble lady. When Mrs. and Su Wan'er sat down, Sun Gro took out the book and leaf from his arms and put it on the table. Since the person involved is here, let's resolve this matter as soon as possible. Su Wan'er's name has been signed on it. I just want to trouble Mrs. to go to the Li mansion to finalize the matter. Sun Xiao sat aside and did not speak, letting Sun Gro take full responsibility. Mrs. looked hesitant. Su Wan'er glanced at her and said, Grandma, if it's inconvenient for you, you can ask Li Rui to come. Su Wan'er just vaguely felt that Li Rui probably wouldn't be able to sign the divorce letter now. But if Madame Su comes forward, the chances may be greater. Mrs. accepted Su Wan'er's request and sent someone to invite Li Rui. But the boy who sent the message back and forth said with trepidation that Li Rui asked Sulayun to be present. These words made Sun Gro and Sun Xiao dissatisfied. What does Li Rui mean? Doesn't it mean that the couple deliberately set up Yun'er? Su Wan'er was the most surprised among them. She had no idea what Li Rui was thinking. Ever since Li Rui woke up, she found that the man who loved her most had completely changed. Li Rui's eyes no longer had any love for her, and there was even a strong hatred in his eyes. Su Wan'er couldn't understand, but she panicked. Especially when Yu Yao was sent away and Granny Lan disappeared, she did not dare to hesitate. The poison given to Sulayun was supposed to remain in Sulayun's body for half a month, but Su Wan'er couldn't wait any longer. Her bracelet that can control poisonous insects was left behind by Granny Lan, and this is the only one. At that time, she deliberately took it off to win Sulayun's trust. If Sulayun really took the bracelet away, she would have no way to control the goo insects. Suleun was quite surprised when he learned that Li Rui wanted to be present. What does Li Rui want to do? Suye, who had already returned, spoke suspiciously. He went there for a while, but he didn't find the good doctor, but he gained something extra. Then the Li family's whereabouts are known. He has already arranged for someone to look for her. Once he finds the person, he will have a bargaining chip to confront Suwanur. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, Past and Present. Chapter 355. Chapter 355. It's time for you to leave. Sun Gro was not willing to let Suleun go, fearing that the other party had other motives. Yunur, let's forget it. If Li Rui and Suwainer really work together to harm you, we won't be able to guard against it. She persuaded. Suleun shook his head. Mom, it's impossible for Li Rui and Suwainer to form a partnership. If the two of them came up with a way to deal with me, why would they have to make so many detours? I can see Li Rui, but only at the Sun Mansion. Sun Gro and Suye could not persuade Suleun, so Sun Shao naturally would not stop his granddaughter's decision, so he sent someone to pass it on. In the afternoon of the second day, Mrsu and Suwainer arrived at the Sun Mansion. After a while, Li Rui also came. As soon as he entered the room, his eyes fell on Suleun, looking at him greedily, as if he was a good friend he hadn't seen for many years. Suleun frowned displeased. What is Li Rui doing? Li Rui. Suwainer noticed Li Rui's gaze and shouted in a low voice. Although she didn't like Li Rui and decided to make peace with Li Rui, they were still husband and wife. Li Rui looked at other women in front of her and didn't take her seriously at all. Li Rui blinked and seemed to have come to his senses, but he did not look at Suwanur. Instead, he found a seat far away and sat down. Li Rui, since you have seen Suleun, you can sign the words on the Li book. Being completely ignored, Suwainer suppressed her anger and spoke word by word. I thought I would get a positive reply from Li Rui, but the next second, I heard Li Rui's voice. I won't sign. What do you mean? Are you going to break your promise? Mrsu was the first to speak. Being teased by a junior was not a happy thing for her. Li Rui looked at Mrsu, with hatred in his eyes. Have I ever promised? I only said that I wanted to see Suleun, but I didn't say that I would sign it when I met her. Li Rui, you are making trouble unreasonably. Suwanur couldn't help but speak. He was startled by Li Rui's sudden look. Since Li Rui woke up, she has been shocked by Li Rui's eyes countless times. She didn't understand, when did Li Rui become so oppressive? Li Rui's eyes of disgust and hatred were not concealed at all, and Suleun could see it. Her eyes suddenly flashed slightly. Those dreams subconsciously came to mind. Li Rui looks a bit like he did many years ago. Suleun lowered his eyes. Could it be that Li Rui? Suwanur, you can never get rid of me in your life. After Li Rui said these words, he stood up and was about to leave. I didn't want to hear a cry of pain from behind. He turned around and saw Suleun slowly squatting down, covering his chest. Yunur. Sun Gro and Suye quickly ran to Suleun, and then the two of them looked directly at Suwanur. Suwanur, why don't you stop? Li Rui, who had resurrected his life, was not stupid. He could tell at a glance that Suleun's current situation was related to Suwainer. He walked back quickly. Suwainer, what are you doing? Why do you care so much about her? Suwainer turned the bracelet on her wrist little by little, with a sneer on her lips. Mrsu was sitting in her seat. Although she didn't understand what happened, she was vaguely aware of the confrontation in front of her, and her body became colder. Suwanur, stop quickly. Suleun bit her lower lip tightly, and blood flowed from between her lips and teeth, taking away her weak cry of pain. The pain is not light, and as Suwainer continues to fidget with the bracelet, it seems to be getting worse. Suwanur looked at the scene in front of her, feeling full of pride. Li Rui, do you want to sign or not? This sentence is already a threat. Although Suwanur didn't understand why Li Rui suddenly cared so much about Suleun, she didn't mind at all as long as it was useful. She didn't intend to have this man anyway. Li Rui really didn't expect that he knew that Suwanur was vicious, but that was all a matter for the future. He definitely didn't expect that Suwanur would have reached this level at this time. Won't you sign? Suwanur said, turning the bracelet faster. Suleun, who was half crouching, had already laid down on his side. If Suya hadn't been protecting him, his head would have hit the ground. Li Rui noticed Suwanur's movements and suddenly reached out and pinched her wrist. The next moment, he took off the bracelet. Suwanur's pupils dilated a little. She didn't expect Li Rui to take action. She tried to stabilize her emotions and said in a calm voice, even if you take off the bracelet, it will be of no use. Li Rui stared at Suwanur for a long time, almost turning her head away from her. Suwanur, you are lying. He and Suwanur have been together for so many years. Once he sees Suwanur's temperament, he will naturally see a lot of things clearly. Even though Suwanur looked calm on the surface now, her fluttering eyelashes and pursed lips all showed that she was lying. Li Rui handed the bracelet to Suya. As long as this bracelet is gone, Suwanur will be unable to control it. Li Rui, stop lying. Even without this bracelet, I can still make Suleun miserable. Suwanur almost gritted her teeth and spoke. She never expected that Li Rui would insist on her lies. But she couldn't take action, as this would only confirm Li Rui's words. The next moment, a clear cracking sound sounded. The bracelet fell apart in Suye's hands. Suleun blinked, and the pain in his heart suddenly disappeared at that moment like a kite with its string broken. Turns out to be true. She was helped up by Sun Gro and sat down. Yunur, how do you feel? Mom, it doesn't hurt anymore. Suleun shook his head, and then looked at Suwanur. Suwanur's face turned pale after the bracelet was broken. Without that bracelet, she wouldn't be able to control the goo worms in Suleun's body at all. Suleun, don't be complacent, you won't be able to kill me if the poisonous insect is not removed for one day. Suwanur didn't know what she thought of and started yelling. Suleun chuckled, but the same pale face made people more protective. It's time for you to leave. Suwanur's face froze and she didn't seem to react. She thought Suleun would do something else, but she didn't expect Suleun to let them leave. Suwanur was in a trance until she walked out of Sun Mansion. Grandma. Suwanur looked at Mrsu beside her, but Mrsu didn't look at her and went straight into the carriage. Suwanur and Li Rui were left in front of the gate of Sun Mansion. Madam, it's time to go back. Li Rui rarely smiled at Suwanur, but that smile fell into Suwanur's eyes like a demon, scaring her into a cold sweat. She wanted to run, but her feet seemed to be rooted to the ground and she couldn't move. At this moment, the fear that emerged in her heart completely overwhelmed her. With a plop, Suwanur fell straight to the ground and passed out. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 356. Chapter 356 Jade Comb. Candlelight dispels the darkness in the house. The woman's eyelids on the bed trembled, and the next moment, they suddenly opened. Suwanur opened her mouth slightly, but only a breath came out of her throat. Her mouth, open, close. The panic in his eyes intensified. Her face trembled, and her hands and feet began to exert force. But there was no response. Can't make a sound or move my body. Tears gathered in Suwanur's eyes, and then fell. Because she was lying on the bed, Suwaner could feel tears streaming down her sides, across her temples, and into her hair. She couldn't move, and the only thing she could see in her eyes was the top of the beam in front of her. "Don't worry, your hands and feet are still there. As for the sound, I was worried that you would wake up and make a fuss, so I did some things." The familiar voice fell into Suwaner's mouth. Suwaner's eyes moved crazily in her sockets, but she couldn't see anyone. It wasn't until Suleun walked to the bed and Suwaner's eyes turned to the left that she finally saw her. A cold light flashed. Suwaner whimpered. She clearly couldn't feel the presence of her hands and feet, but severe pain still came instantly. The tears in her eyes gathered again. Suleun took less than half a bowl of blood and then sprinkled medicinal powder on Suwaner's wound. The powder fell on the wound, and pain burst out again. Suwaner has rarely suffered like this. Her mouth is wide open and her expression is painful. But I can't make a sound, and it seems that I can't express the painful feeling either. Mrs. Lee fainted unexpectedly, but was found to be seriously ill and must rest in the house. Don't worry, no one will know you are here. Suleun's words were no less than a whisper from to Suwaner at this time. Suwaner whined and blinked at Suleun, as if begging for mercy but also struggling. "Have a good rest." Suleun picked up the bowl filled with blood, turned around and blew out the candle. The house fell into darkness. In the darkness, Suwaner could hear the creak of the door being closed. There was no light in front of her eyes. Outside the house, Suye saw Suleun coming out, stood up and stepped forward, asking, "Did she do anything to you? I can't move my body and can't make a sound. What can Suwaner do to me?" Suleun raised the bowl in his hand and returned. Suye breathed a sigh of relief. Just by looking at Suleun's face, he knew that Suwaner couldn't do anything. "We don't know the status of the poison, and I'm worried that she may have a backup plan. If there is a backup plan, Suwaner will not fail to use it." Suleun handed the bowl to Lian Xian's hand and asked her to take it to Mr. Zhang. Lao Zhang, who had just left Jin Prince's mansion, now came to the Sun family to work again. "You are right." Suye nodded and approved Suleun's words. "Master, there's news." King Guo walked in quickly, waving a piece of paper in his hand. He brought news about the Li family and his wife. It's just that this news is somewhat unbelievable. The ones who brought the Li family and his wife out of the north were actually the Huo family. Suye and Suleun looked at each other, the surprise in their eyes also difficult to conceal. This matter is also related to the Huo family. "Yuner, this matter. Brother, there's no need to rush." Suleun slowly shook his head. "Are you asking someone to go and see what's going on in private? We can't get any favors from the Huo family if we take action easily. Although the Huo family is not arrogant, and there has never been any rumors of bullying, but where is the family status? Even if the Sun family wants to touch each other, they have to think twice." Suye also understood what Suleun meant. If there was any misunderstanding, it would be easy to explain, but if it were not a misunderstanding, it would be really troublesome. Looking at Suwaner's appearance, she doesn't seem to know about this. He suddenly thought. Suleun thought about it carefully and said, "I'll test it out later. You must tell us if you feel unwell." Suye becomes very uneasy whenever he thinks that there is a goo insect in Suleun's body. "I know." Suleun looked calm, but she also had the same worries as Suye. "I just don't want to show it, which will only increase Suye's troubles." The days passed in a dull and not so mundane way. In the blink of an eye, there are only 3 days left before the day when Suleun gets married. Suleun walked into the room. Xiang Lingling was sitting in front of the dressing table, groping on the table, looking for something. Hearing the sound, she moved Lingling's ear and asked, "Who?" "Miss, it's Miss Leun here." The maid opened her mouth. "My cousin is here, you can sit wherever you like." He smiled at Lingling and finally found what he wanted, which was a hairpin. She raised her head again and stuck the hairpin into her hair without asking the maid to help. The hairpin was inserted crookedly in Xiang Lingling's hair. The maid reminded softly, "Miss, your hairpin is tilted upward." "Really?" Xiang Lingling asked, continuing to move her hands, taking off the hairpin and inserting it again. "What about this? It's going down a little bit more." The conversation went back and forth several times, and the hairpin was finally inserted just right. "Cousin, are you still there?" Can't see what's in front of him, and can't hear any sound, so he speaks softly to Lingling. Sulayun responded, "I'm here. Cousin, I have already prepared your birthday gift. If you come just in time, I will give it to you directly." After saying this to Lingling, he asked the maid to get the gift. Then he stood up from the dressing mirror and moved forward bit by bit, trying to reach the table. "You gave it to me so early, weren't you afraid that I would just tear it down?" Sulayun spoke in a relaxed tone and did not get up to help Lingling. Xiang Lingling didn't care too much and said, "It was originally a gift for my cousin. What does it matter if I open it early? What's more, I also want to know if your cousin likes this gift. If you don't like it, I will prepare it again for my cousin." "Now that you say that, I'm even more curious." Sulayun stared at Xiang Lingling and continued, "If I am not satisfied, I will have a double gift." As her words fell, Xiang Lingling also walked to the table and successfully sat down on the chair. "Cousin, please don't be such a big talker." Xiang Lingling knew in her heart that Sulayun didn't really want a gift, but just kept the conversation going so that she could identify the person by listening to the voice. Soon, the maid came over with the gift prepared for Lingling. Things were placed on a tray and covered with a red cloth. The maid took away the red cloth, revealing the crystal clear jade box inside. Through the jade box, you can vaguely see a jade comb inside. This jade box and jade comb are a pair. My cousin also knows that Yunchinj is rich in jade, and our Xiang family also relied on jade to make our fortune. This jade box and jade comb were made by a craftsman of our Xiang family. He briefly introduced the origin of the things to Lingling. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 357. Chapter 357, What is weak is not replenished. Sulayun opened the jade box, took out the jade comb inside, and placed it in the sun. It really shimmered like a lake. Xiang Lingling listened to the sound and hesitated. "Cousin, do you still like this gift? Put the jade comb back into the jade box." Hearing the crisp collision sound, he blinked at Lingling. "I like it very much, thank you Lingling for your gift." Sulayun ordered Quiliu to pick up the jade box and sat back down. At this moment, she asked, "Lingling, how have your eyes been these days?" He pursed his lower lip towards Lingling and said, "It's still the same, I can't see anything." As he spoke, he seemed to feel something and moved towards Lingling uneasily. Sulayun immediately noticed Xiang Lingling's uneasiness, and smelled a medicinal smell in his nose, which was also mixed with an unspeakable smell. She looked sideways and saw a middle-aged man with a thin face and deep-set eyes walking towards the house. The middle-aged man was followed by a medicine boy, holding medicine in his hand. "Miss Yang, it's time to take medicine." The middle-aged man spoke as soon as he entered the room. At the end, he saw Sulayun, and a flash of surprise flashed across his eyes. "Who is this?" "This is Miss Sulayun from our house." Lian Xian stared at the middle-aged man warily and returned. The middle-aged man then looked back with greedy eyes. "It turns out to be Miss Sulayun, surnamed Chen, whose name is Ji. I have met Miss Sulayun." His courtesy was hard to fault, but his tone of voice had a slippery feel that was hard to wash away. It makes people feel uncomfortable when they hear it. Sulayun said calmly, "Dr. Chen, please diagnose and treat cousin Lingling these days. It's all what I should do." Chen Ji was not modest at all. The medicine boy had already stepped forward and placed the bowl in front of Xiang Lingling. This bowl of medicine is brown and looks very bitter. Xiang Lingling frowned slightly and reached for it. Putting the bowl to his mouth, before taking the first sip, Xiang Lingling covered her mouth, retched, and quickly put the bowl down. Lingling. Sulayun held the shaking bowl against his hand, his tone a little hasty. Xiang Lingling waved her free hand in the air, while the other hand was still covering her mouth, wanting to vomit but unable to do so. Looking at the scene in front of him, Chen Ji said, "Miss Xiang, if you drink this medicine while it's hot, the effect will be better." "Dr. Chen, this medicine is really too bitter." Xiang Lingling didn't know whether she drank this medicine for 5 days or 6 days. In short, every time she drank it, she felt more bitter than the last time. Perhaps it was because Sulayun was here today that she proposed her idea to Lingling for the first time. "Dr. Chen, does this medicine really work?" Xiang Lingling knew that she was not a doctor, so she could not identify the efficacy of this bowl of medicine, but as a patient who drank medicine, she would be somewhat aware of whether there was any effect after drinking a bowl of medicine. She drank this bowl of medicine for several days. She was not sure whether it would cure her eyes. But she could feel her body becoming sleepy and tired. "Even though I have slept for a long time, I still feel it is not enough." Chen Ji's expression remained unchanged, and his tone was a little heavy. "Miss Yang, if you don't believe me, let Ms. Yang find another capable person." "What are you talking about, Dr. Chen?" "I feel at ease when you treat Lingling." Ms. Yang appeared from one side and entered the room. "Lingling, you still haven't apologized to Dr. Chen." Xiang Lingling was struggling and seemed unable to speak. She had no intention of changing the doctor, but she had doubts in her heart and felt uncomfortable hiding it, so she asked. Why did Dr. Chen misunderstand her like this? Sulayun naturally sees things more clearly than Xiang Lingling. Chen Ji dares to say such things just because he has the support of Ms. Xiang. Her eyes passed over the bowl of medicine. He suddenly opened his mouth, pretending to be puzzled and said, "Dr. Chen, I wonder what is in this medicine that makes it smell so bitter." Chen Ji looked at Sulayun and raised his head a little higher. In his opinion, Sulayun, a young lady in the family, probably didn't understand these things and was curious. "This medicine contains cassia seeds." "Oh, is there cassia seed in this medicine?" Sulayun took the bowl and took a sip. It was really bitter. "How could I remember that cassia seed is not bitter?" "Miss Su, where did you hear this? Cassia seeds are bitter, as anyone who has studied it knows." Chen Ji sneered. Sulayun said again, "Are there really cassia seeds here? If Miss Su doesn't believe it, I also have the prescription. See for yourself if there is cassia seed on it." Chen Ji seemed to be angered by Sulayun's distrustful words, and actually took out the prescription from his arms. Xiang frowned at the old lady, feeling that something was not right about the scene in front of her. This stinky girl has obviously studied medicine, how come she doesn't even know this bit of common sense? "Dr. Chen." As soon as Ms. Yang started talking, Sulayun interrupted her. "Dr. Chen, the prescription is not necessarily the same as the ingredients you used to make the medicine. Maybe you used another prescription to lie to me." "Okay, then I'll ask someone to get the medicine residue." Chen Ji was even more displeased that a hairy girl dared to question her again and again. It really made him feel dissatisfied. Ms. Yang already understood that there was something wrong with this, but in full view of the public, she could not do anything. She couldn't help but glance at Chen Ji. She had clearly told Chen Ji that Sulayun was a doctor, so why did she still fall into Sulayun's trap? Actually, Madame Xiang did say this, but she also mentioned Divine Dr. Wang, so Chen Ji subconsciously thought that the person who really did the work was Divine Dr. Wang, and did not remember Sulayun in his mind at all. In his opinion, how powerful can a little girl be? As soon as the medicine boy heard Chen Ji's words, He immediately turned around and ran out. Looking at his posture, it was obvious that he had been beaten by Chen Ji without any delay. Sulayun's eyes fell on Mrs. Yang, with a slight smile on her lips. The old lady who wanted to do something froze. She could feel the meaning in Sulayun's smile. Soon, the medicine boy brought the medicine residue. Chen Ji picked out the burnt cassia seeds and placed them on the table one by one. This is cassia seed. While he was speaking, he noticed that Sulayun was taking something else out of the medicine residue. He looked intently, his face trembled, and a sense of absurdity arose in his heart. The few medicinal herbs selected by Sulayun, looked at alone, there is nothing wrong with them, but when added together, they will produce another effect. This effect intensifies the potency of this bowl of medicine. It will make the patient over-replenished, which will lead to a situation of deficiency and lack of replenishment. Chen Ji looked over to old Madame Xiang, and saw that old Madame Xiang's face was not very good looking either. At this time, he remembered something that old Madame Xiang had said to him. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 358. Chapter 358, I don't know as much as Dr. Chen. As soon as he arrived at the Sun Mansion that day, he was called to the old lady. Dr. Chen, didn't you say that Lingling's illness is something that ordinary doctors can't detect? Chen Ji was curious and asked who diagnosed Xiang Lingling's disease, and heard the old lady Xiang reply, what kind of Dr. Wang from Baikatang can a stinky girl have? I don't know what kind of doctor she is. Shanai Wang, are you talking about Wang Jianlin? Chen Ji confirmed his answer almost immediately. There is a Baikatang in the capital, and there is only a doctor named Wang in the Baikatang. It must be him. Therefore, Chen Ji did not ask at all who the smelly girl he told the old lady was. Now seeing Mrs. Yang's face, Chen Ji remembered this matter for some reason. He rolled his eyes and fell on Sulayun. Sulayun has already picked out the medicinal materials and placed them next to the cassia seeds, clearly showing his presence. She met Chen Ji's eyes and smiled lightly. You know how to heal. Dr. Chen swallowed a sip of saliva. For some reason, his voice was still ups and downs when he asked. Understand a little bit. Sulayun nodded slightly, maybe I don't know as much as Dr. Chen, but I didn't know that these medicinal herbs can also treat eye diseases. It seems that with medical skills, I really need to continue to work hard. Ha ha ha. Chen Ji laughed a few times and wanted to say something, but didn't know how to speak. Even if Sulayun really didn't understand the purpose of this medicinal material, he would know it clearly after asking about it. Furthermore, Sulayun has already seen the medicine residue and the prescription. Even if he wanted to defend himself, he couldn't say anything. Dr. Chen, I'm afraid you've been tired these past few days. You should go back and rest first. I opened my mouth to the old lady, and if I let Chen Ji stay any longer, I'm afraid something bad would happen. As soon as Chen Ji heard what Mrs. Yang said, he immediately bowed and said, then I'll go down first. After saying that, he took the medicine boy and left quickly without looking back. Inside the room, the atmosphere fell into a stalemate. Grandma, Xiang Lingling's voice became clearer in the silence, this matter has something to do with you, right? Chen Ji is the doctor of the Xiang family and was found by the old lady. No matter how courageous he is, he would not dare to do it without the old lady's permission. Although Xiang Lingling's eyes were invisible, her heart became brighter and brighter. She didn't say what it was, but this sentence alone was enough to make it clear. The curvature of the corners of Xiang Madam's lips disappeared, and her tone became a little heavier. Lingling, can't you see how your grandmother treats you? Can't you feel it? Listen to what you said. You are trampling on your grandmother's heart. Grandmother. Xiang Lingling stood up and suddenly knelt on the ground. The chair was knocked away by her and rolled to the ground. She slowly lowered her head and knelt on the ground. Grandma, please take Lingling back to Yunchange. I will do whatever you ask me to do. You. Mrs. Yang's eyes suddenly widened, her index finger pointed at Xiang Lingling who was kneeling on the ground, her mouth trembled slightly, not knowing what to say. Xiang Lingling raised her head. She could not see her clearly, but her eyes fell directly on Mrs. Yang. The figure of the old lady was reflected in those empty eyes. When Mrs. Yang met Xiang Lingling's gaze, she felt a chill coming from all over her body for no apparent reason. You are going to rebel. Grandma, what you said is wrong. What's wrong with cousin Lingling wanting to go home? What's more, she's so obedient. She's willing to do whatever you ask her to do. Why is she going against the grain? Could it be that cousin Lingling doesn't want to go home? Why don't I go home and not listen to you in any way, so that I don't rebel? Xiang Lingling's words were not difficult to understand, but Sulayun realized that there was something hidden in it, so he spoke subconsciously. Mrs. Yang's face turned pale with anger, but she opened her mouth to refute, but she didn't know where to start. The reason is that what Sulayun said is indeed reasonable. You two worked together to bully me, an old woman. I couldn't explain it to the old lady, so I could only change the topic. Sulayun raised his eyebrows and walked forward quickly. Grandma, what did you say? Sit down quickly. How can my cousin and I bully you? Don't be angry. Think about it carefully. My cousin and I can't. Doesn't that make sense? Think about it, it's normal for my cousin to be worried and scared like this now. Isn't it more normal for her to miss home, her parents, and her brothers and sisters? In fact, my cousin wants to go back because she doesn't want you to be tired. You see how old you are. I still have to think about this and that all day long. Doesn't my cousin feel sorry for you when I see you? Now that you're back, you don't have to worry about it. You have your cousin and the others to help you solve your problems, and you don't have to worry about those people with evil intentions who will deliberately deceive you because of your kindness. So, please don't be angry, my cousin, this is all for your own good. Sulayun finished speaking, but he didn't give him a chance to speak to the old lady. Facing someone who puts on airs like this, it will be easier to win over the other person only if you put on more airs than she does. Mrs. Yang was stunned for a moment by what Sulayun said. If she hadn't been very clear about it, she might have been talked about. Grandma, that's exactly what Lingling means. Xiang Lingling could tell that Sulayun was helping her. After Sulayun finished speaking, she quickly added something. You. Shuang Xiang closed his mouth to the old lady, having nothing to say. I won't tell you whether these are available or not. After saying that, she shook off Sulayun's hand and turned to leave. Lian Xian and Kui Lu stood aside, their heads lowered together and their shoulders twitching slightly. I want to laugh but I can't laugh out loud. The room was quiet again. After a moment, Xiang Lingling's low voice sounded, Cousin, thank you for helping me. What kind words are there? Sulayun patted Xiang Lingling on the shoulder. Are you really planning to go back to Yunchange? Well, my eyes are just like this anyway, they will be the same wherever I go. Speaking to Lingling, she raised her head with a smile on her face. She was as bright as when Sulayun first saw her. Sulayun could feel that Xiang Lingling had completely accepted her blindness, but because of this, she felt even more distressed. Don't worry, I'll ask Mr. Zhang to come and take a look at you this afternoon, maybe he has a way. Sulayun had originally planned to ask Mr. Zhang to come and take a look, but Mr. Zhang seemed to have made some new discoveries about poisons in the past few days and kept himself locked in the room without disturbing her. Only when Mr. Zhang needs something, Sulayun will go to Su Weiner's place, pick it up and send it to Mr. Zhang. I didn't even see him face to face. I just put down my things and left alone. After all, it would not be good if she disturbed Mr. Zhang's thoughts. It's okay, cousin, I don't care anymore. Speak to Lingling. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 359. Chapter 359 And the Day of Haircut. Perhaps if she had looked away earlier, she wouldn't be in the current situation. Xiang Lingling's mouth was a little more bitter, but she couldn't blame anyone, it was her own choice. Since it doesn't matter, why not try more? Suleun's soft voice made Xiang Lingling's heart beat heavily. Xiang Lingling understands this truth, why doesn't she hope to see the light again? Is there really a chance? But she did not refuse again and allowed Suleun to arrange it. Lao Zhang just finished a medicine test and saw Suleun sitting in the yard as soon as he went out. You are quite leisurely. He stepped forward, took the tea from Lian Xian, and drank it in one gulp. With Mr. Zhang here, I really can't excuse myself if I don't take my time. Suleun joked. It's not like she never said she wanted to help, but Mr. Zhang refused her for some reason. Since she was rejected, she could no longer stand on the sidelines and watch, so she could only give up her position and let Mr. Zhang study it carefully. For you. Lao Zhang handed over a small porcelain bottle with only one brown pill in it, about the size of a small pearl. Suleun took the porcelain bottle, poured the pills out, and asked, Mr. Zhang, what is this? I didn't let you follow me before because I was worried that Suwainer's blood or something might affect the goo worms in your body, but if you take the pills here, you don't have to worry. Before Zhang Lao finished speaking, Suleun raised his head and took the pill. He looked at Suleun's crisp movements and asked, aren't you afraid of me poisoning you? Mr. Zhang, if you want to poison me, you don't have to go to so much trouble, right? Suleun knew what Mr. Zhang said but still teased, brother said that there is no whereabouts of Zhang Yang yet. Not yet. Lao Zhang said nothing, but his expression was a little lower than before. Don't worry, no news is probably the best news, right? Don't worry, as a person of my age, do I still need the comfort of a girl? That kid Zhang Yang has his own ideas, and I'm not worried that something will happen to him. Mr. Zhang shook his head. What he was worried about was not whether something would happen to Zhang Yang. Instead of saying that no news was the best news, it would be better to say that no news was the worst news. Once this child starts to poke fun at him, what happens next will be nothing short of minor. He was worried that Zhang Yang might be preparing something. Ah, sneeze. Zhang Yang sharpened the dagger in his hand and rubbed his nose. Who was talking bad about him? Caught a cold? At the side, Tuno was also polishing the dagger in his hand, and he took advantage of the opportunity to look up and ask. Zhang Yang shook his head, my nose is a little itchy. Under the sun, the swords shined brilliantly. The village, which is usually busy, is even busier today. Zhang Yang put down the tools in his hands and looked into the distance. At the gate of the village, there were ox carts and carriages driving in vaguely. People in the village gathered around and unloaded everything from the car one by one. Tuno, Zhang Yang, come here. Qiu Yi's voice came. Tuno also put down what he was holding and shouted back, come right away. Zhang Yang, let's go. Zhang Yang withdrew his gaze, put away the dagger as well, and walked quickly towards Qiu Yi with Tuno. While running, Zhang Yang observed the surrounding atmosphere. These days, he has been staying in the stockade, and he can clearly feel that the number of people in the stockade is increasing day by day, and the murderous intention is becoming more and more obvious. Zhang Yang didn't know what the people in the village wanted to do, but he still chose to join. Zhang Yang knows himself very well. He knows what kind of character he is in his bones, and making trouble is not too big. Since he was brought back to the village by Tuno, even if he didn't do anything, he was already connected with the village. Xiao Yang. Tanyo noticed Zhang Yang's daze, Actually, if you don't want to, you can leave now. I will follow what my brother and the others say. Lao Zhang and Zhang Yang had saved his life, but in fact he should not have brought Zhang Yang in. Zhang Yang bumped Tino with his elbow. Don't think too much, hurry up. After saying that, Zhang Yang quickened his pace and walked forward. Tino couldn't think too much and hurriedly followed. Entering the house, there were some people Zhang Yang had never seen before. They were sitting or standing, and they seemed to be of high status. However, the person sitting on the main seat is not Fan Yu, but the masked master Ying. Sir, everyone is here. Fan Yu arrived at the shadow. Ying's eyes swept across Zhang Yang and quickly looked away. 2 months from now, that's when we start. Ying's voice was cold, but the words that came out of his mouth made Zhang Yang shudder. Emperor Jianwen will take several princes out of the palace and go to other courtyards to escape the summer heat at that time. It is a good time for us to take action. Yes. Zhang Yang lowered his head until the people in the room gradually dispersed. He just came back to his senses and moved his somewhat stiff body. Tino, you should go back too. Fan Yu looked at Zhang Yang and then looked at Tino. Tino nodded and pulled Zhang Yang away. Are you okay? I would be lying if I said it was okay. Zhang Yang smiled helplessly. He could feel that what the people in the village were doing was not a trivial matter, but he did not expect it to be such a big thing. Assassinating the emperor? It's just that he already knew the plan, but it was impossible to leave. Tino also knows this truth. Don't think too much. If it doesn't work, I will plead for you in front of my elder brother when the time comes. When the matter is over, I will let you leave. Thank you very much. Zhang Yang returned. That's all Tino can do. Zhang Yang understands. He sighed. Grandpa had told him before that if he didn't do something, it would be a big deal. Now it seemed that Grandpa was indeed right. Fortunately, Grandpa is safe now and he doesn't have to worry. The news about Zhang Liuping was not deliberately suppressed, so Tino asked someone to go to the capital for Zhang Yang to inquire about it, and then he learned the news. May 17th. Sulayun celebrated her 15th birthday, which was also the day when she got hair extensions. Early in the morning, many guests were welcomed at the door of Sun Mansion. Lin Shangshu and Mrs. Lin came early with Lin Qingqing. Lin Shangshu stayed in the main hall, while Mrs. Lin took Lin Qingqing to Qin Zian's courtyard first. Sun Yuxuan was also called out by Qin Zian early in the morning. When Mrs. Lin brought Lin Qingqing over, Qin Zian was still wiping his face. Xiaoxian! Lin Qingqing shouted and ran into the house. Sun Yuxuan groaned, hugged himself, and realized that he hadn't dressed yet. Why are you embarrassed now? I just told you that Qingqing is here, but you still don't believe it. Qin Zian nodded his forehead and smiled. Mother. Sun Yuxuan blushed and urged his mother to change his clothes quickly. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 360. Chapter 360 Uninvited. Lin Qingqing was taken outside by Mrs. Lin so that Sun Yuxuan could feel at ease and change clothes. By the time Yuxuan's son came out, Lin Qingqing was already sitting on a chair, eating snacks. Xiaoxian. Seeing Sun Yuxuan appear, Lin Qingqing put down the snacks in her hands, jumped down from the chair, and trotted all the way to Sun Yuxuan's side. The two children came together and whispered for a while. Sun Yuxuan said to Qin Zian, Mom, can I take Qingqing to see Sister Leun? Go, but if Sister Leun is busy, don't disturb her. Qin Zian asked her grandma to follow her and stayed to greet Mrs. Lin. Sun Yuxuan took Lin Qingqing's hand and walked quickly to Keahuaziazu. Keahuaziazuli also has a busy scene. Where are the shoes? Bring them quickly. As soon as Sun Yuxuan and Lin Qingqing entered the courtyard, they heard Grandma Li's voice. Lian Xian and Kui Lu were responsible for supervising the work of the other maids, so they noticed when Sun Yuxuan and Lin Qingqing came in. Master Xiaoxian, Miss Qingqing, why are you here? The lady is still preparing in the house. I will take you to the side room for a while, okay? Lian Xian stepped forward and spoke softly. Sun Yuxuan and Lin Qingqing were both well behaved and sensible, so they naturally nodded and followed Lian Xian to the side room. There were a lot of snacks prepared in the side room. When the two children saw it, their eyes lit up. Worried that they would be bored, Lian Xian also brought a few gadgets over for the two of them to play with. There are many things that need to be dealt with in the yard, and Lian Xian cannot stay with her two children. Master Xiaoxian, Miss Qingqing, if you need anything, just call the slave at the door, and the slave will come over if you hear it. I understand, Sister Liangxin, go and do your work. Sun Yuxuan waved to Lian Xian not to worry. Seeing this, Lian Xian turned around and left. Actually, there is still a grandma taking care of the house, so Lian Xian doesn't have to worry too much. Sun Yuxuan and Lin Qingqing had a great time playing with a 9-ring ring in one hand and a Lubin lock in the other. Soon, the two children got tired of it. Throwing the things in his hands on the table, Sun Yuxuan caught a glimpse of the suddenly lively scene outside. With a thought in mind, he whispered a few words into Lin Qingqing's ear. Lin Qingqing carefully pointed to the nanny beside her and signaled to Sun Yuxuan. Look at me. Sun Yuxuan winked, suddenly covered his stomach and howled. Ouch, my stomach hurts so much, Mama, I want to go to the toilet. What's wrong with Master Xiaoxian? Upon hearing this, Grandma hurriedly stepped forward to check, but did not see any problem. She could only say, I will take the young master to the toilet. Miss Qingqing, please wait here. Lin Qingqing nodded obediently. When Mammy left with Sun Yuxuan, Lin Qingqing jumped off the bed and ran to the door to observe the situation outside. Sneaked out quietly when no one was paying attention. Lin Qingqing ran to the corner outside the yard. After a while, Sun Yuxuan hurried over with his pants picked up. How did you get out? The toilet has a small door that no one else knows about. Sun Yuxuan chuckled and was about to step forward to grab Lin Qingqing's hand, but was rejected. You just came out of the toilet and haven't washed your hands yet. Lin Qingqing glanced at Sun Yuxuan with disgust, and the latter blushed, I'll wash it right away. In the darkness, Sun Wen sighed lightly. These two little guys made such a fuss even when the young lady was growing up. Thinking about it, he followed him again. Fortunately, the two little guys did not want to cause trouble, but sneaked into the front hall. More and more guests are coming to the door. Sun Yuxuan and Lin Qingqing hide in the crowd due to their small size and are inconspicuous. Ah, why is Chai Ming here? Lin Qingqing saw Chai Ming first, and quickly stretched out her hand to pull at Sun Yuxuan, who was beside him and didn't know where to look. Sun Yuxuan was originally staring at a few people walking not far away, but Lin Qingqing pulled him away and he looked away. Why didn't you see his stepmother today? Noting that Chai Ming was followed only by the wet nurse and the maid, Sun Yuxuan spoke out curiously. Lin Qingqing glanced at Sun Yuxuan, didn't you listen yesterday? What? Sun Yuxuan looked at Lin Qingqing curiously. Chai Ming's father divorced Chai Ming's stepmother. Ah! Sun Yuxuan's eyes widened, a little unbelievable. He didn't even hear about such a big thing yesterday. Sun Yuxuan couldn't care less about being surprised because the person he saw earlier had already walked in and walked towards Sun Xiao. Lu Hong brought Lu Huiyuan's 3 brothers and sister forward, bowed to Sun Xiao and said, Congratulations, General Sunday. Sun Xiao's eyes passed over Lu Hong and his voice was steady, You're welcome. He has not sent invitations to anyone in the Lu family. The Lu family came uninvited, and he should have kicked them out, but today was Yunus' positive day, and he didn't want these things to affect everything today. Sun Xiao's eyes were a little deeper. Master Lu brought his family here, it seems sincere. I hope it will be the same in reality soon. There was a threat in his words that was hard to ignore. If the Lu family dared to cause trouble today, he would not care about the brotherly relationship he had with Lu Hong's father. Sun Yuxuan curled his lips in dissatisfaction. He hoped that his grandfather could drive these Lu family members out, but he also understood the truth. On such an important day, no accidents could happen. Ching ching, let's go back. My sister should be fine soon. Well, let's go. The two little guys left from the front hall holding hands. Just as the two were leaving, there was a sound from outside. King Yu has arrived. The guests in the front hall stood up one after another and looked outside in surprise. It is rare for a prince to come to the hairpin ceremony. Xiao Jin walked over with elegant steps. He had a smile on his face and waved the folding fan gently in his hand, which immediately attracted Lu Shuiying's attention. But the thought of such a prince coming to attend Suleun's haircut ceremony made her feel angry. Shuiying. Lu Huayuan understood his sister's temperament and spoke softly, interrupting Lu Shuiying's thoughts. Lu Shuiying pouted and came to her senses. Beside, Lu Suya blinked her eyes, and then slowly lowered her eyelids. I don't know what I'm thinking about. Yuan Jai. Sun Xiao's face looked uglier than when he saw Lu Hong before, but no one noticed. Xiao Jin didn't notice. Old General Sun, I came here uninvited today just to make fun of myself. I hope you don't mind. You're welcome, Prince Yu. It's an honor for all of us that you can come. Sun Xiao replied calmly and asked the butler to take Xiao Jin to the banquet hall. At this time, it was less than a quarter of an hour before the ceremony started. The guests took their seats in the banquet hall one after another, while Sun Changping walked through the banquet hall and arranged the guests. End of this chapter.